Hey, it's Amy. And once again, it is Sunday, so I have somehow inadvertently gotten myself into a kind of upload schedule of sorts. So I think I'm going to stick to it while I still can because I usually can't stick to a schedule to save my life, and this is very unusual for me, but in a surprisingly pleasant kind of way. So anyways, today I'm going to be discussing Home Before Dark by Riley Sager, which I just finished last night at 2:30 a.m. This is a horror thriller novel revolving around a haunted house. I normally avoid haunted house horror novels because they're just not my thing, but for some reason I decided to give this one a shot. Actually, no, it's not for some reason. I know exactly what the reason is. It's because Bookish Realm gave the book a really good review in one of her videos, and I decided I wanted to see if I agreed with her. The protagonist in this book is a woman named Maggie, whose family has been in the spotlight since she was 5 when her father published a best-selling novel, this Amityville horror knockoff sort of thing called House of Shadows, about the family's true-to-life experience living in Bainbury Hall, this supposedly haunted house in a small town in Vermont. This book made her family rich, but it also led to her parents getting divorced and to Maggie herself being teased and shunned at school because she's known as the one kid who lived in a haunted house, or the kid whose father tells lies, depending on who you're talking to. People will either ridicule her or want to be her friend just because they're intrigued by the haunted house thing. So you can imagine being a shy, quiet kid. This is probably a terrible thing for Maggie to have to go through. So as a result, she really hates the book, which she actually spells with a capital B, and is full of resentment and distrust towards her parents as well, because she thinks they made up the story just to sell books, and they also refuse to talk about the events that happened in the book, which they claim to be true, but Maggie doesn't remember at all, despite having featured heavily in all of them. So in the present day, which is 25 years later, Maggie now works as a house flipper. So she and her friend Allie are kind of like the Property Brothers. They renovate houses and redo their interiors, and with the firm belief that every house has a story to tell. And that's actually the crux of this novel. Bainbury Hall has several stories to tell, but the question is, should they be unearthed, or is it best to just leave the past in the past? At the beginning of the book, Maggie's father has just passed away and left her Bainbury Hall, which she thought this entire time he'd already sold, since the family never returned there after they fled when she was 5, with just the clothes on their backs, as the book states. But apparently not, since she inherits it, and like she notes that before he died, like the last time she visited him, he had told her explicitly to never go back there because, quote, it's not safe for you. So talk about mixed messages. But why didn't he just sell the house back then if he truly believed it wasn't safe for her? Was there a reason he held on to it? That's a question I had, and that's a question Maggie has as well. So she decides she'll go back to Bainbury Hall under the guise of fixing it up and remodeling it to sell. But the reason, like the true reason why she's there, is just to find out why her father wrote that book. So when she gets there, she encounters the neighbors whose families have been taking care of the house and the grounds for generations. And the neighbors and the other characters in town in this book are just kind of like stock characters that you would encounter in every haunted house novel, like the old lady with dementia or Alzheimer's who remembers specific things from the past and probably knows a lot of useful, important stuff, but is incoherent most of the time. And there's also the good-looking guy next door, the police chief who originally investigated the case 25 years ago, the nosy reporter who did the interview with her family and wrote the original newspaper story about them that led to them getting the book deal 25 years ago, and as well as the grieving survivor from the previous family who lived in Bainbury Hall before Maggie's family did. And, this family obviously met a tragic end, which is just one of the many tragic stories associated with the hall. Maggie goes into the entire thing almost completely skeptical. Like, I think this is why I wanted to keep reading the book, because the protagonist just is like me. She's a non-believer. I myself don't believe in ghosts. I think the monsters outside of fiction that we know as humans and the horrible acts that they perpetrate are way scarier than anything paranormal I can come across in a book or movie. And I'm aware that these sound like famous last words, because in every horror movie the non-believer character is among the first to go, so knock on wood, I guess. But really, like, there's a reason I can keep reading these books at night the way I do. So as soon as she moves into Baneberry Hall, Maggie starts experiencing weird shit that's eerily reminiscent of what her father describes in the book. But again, she doesn't remember any of this. This is just what she remembers from reading the book herself when she was 9. But yeah, because she's a skeptic, she always dismisses like any of the unusual happenings, you know, that happened to her when she moves into the house. And she comes up with like a logical explanation for everything. For example, she sees someone standing outside staring up at her window at night, and immediately thinks that it's a gawker there to check out what a haunted house looks like. I think this is a reasonable thing to believe, to be honest. I probably would have believed that myself, and done the same thing she did, which was rush outside to confront them and tell them to go away. But of course, they're no longer there by the time she gets there. And the handsome guy next door, who she's hired at this point to help her with a remodeling project, tells her that he didn't see or hear anything, but someone was definitely there. So, you know, what in the world is going on? At that point, at the point that Maggie returns to the house and starts to go through her father's old things, the book starts to switch to alternating points of view. So one chapter will be in Maggie's point of view in the present, and the next will be from her father's point of view in the past. And we assume that the father's parts are actually the chapters of House of Shadows. So this is another book with a story within a story, and it works pretty well. Like, something creepy will happen in the present day, and the next chapter will show you how that's connected to something that happened in the past. Riley Sager does a really good job getting you to want to find out what happened, like to do the research along with the characters into the house's past and everything like that. So the father's parts are a lot of fun to read, even though they're more of your typical haunted house fare. And the author admits that himself. He also says that part was inspired by Amityville Horror and other books like that, obviously. But the main story is Maggie's story, and like Maggie, I just wanted to know what was true and what wasn't out of her father's book, because it really does just read like one of those kind of trashy best-selling horror novels about based on a true story, those things. But the twists in this book are fantastic. Like, I would guess that this is what actually happened, and then the book would kind of lead in that direction, so it made me believe that I was super smart, and then next chapter that whole theory would be blown out of the water, and I'd have to come up with another theory, and then that would get disproved as well, and I enjoyed that so much. I don't want to spoil the story any further, so I'll end there, but now I kind of want to read Riley Sager's other books. Actually, on that note, I thought Riley Sager was a woman the entire time I was reading, and I don't know why, I just did. So I was really surprised when I went looking for an author interview after I finished reading and found out he's a man. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I kind of wondered why I thought that, and I think it's because there were some little things in the book, like Maggie's reactions and her comments to her hot male next door neighbor, that made me think, Riley Sager gets it. Riley Sager must be one of us. But again, as was the case most of the time I was reading this, I was wrong. So I am going to go ahead and go read some other fun stuff now. So have a good rest of your Sunday, everyone. Thanks for listening. Bye.